Landlords, there are two really big mistakes, or simple mistakes actually, that could cost you £30,000. And from the 1st of May, these are really relevant. And if you get these wrong as landlord, as I said, could cost you thousands, not hundreds, thousands. And what are they? Enforcement notices and rent repayment orders. And the important part, it's not something to worry about in the future. It's already happening. It's already here. Because since the 27th of December last year, local councils have been given significantly more powers. And we're already seeing it locally. Enforcement officers are now in Fenland, in Huntingdonshire and Cambridgeshire, and they're funded nationally to the tune of around 60 million. As I said, that's national, not just those three ones. So logically, these teams will need to justify their existence. And in many cases, they've got to be self-funding. How are they going to do that? Through enforcement. So what actually changed? Well, they've now got to report to the Secretary of State on how they're enforcing housing standards. They can also retain the fines they issue. No difference there, but the fines are larger. They've got increased inspections. They can take far more proactive approach. It's no longer reactive, it's active enforcement. So what can they actually do? Well, as I said, enhanced inspection powers and entry powers. They can access the property within 24 hours notice, usually invited by perhaps a grumpy tenant. Or they can enter with a warrant if they need. They've got far stronger investigation powers. They can request up to 12 months of information. Documents must be provided within set deadlines and in writing. And if you don't comply, you delay, or you provide the incorrect information, you receive a civil penalty. So what does that look like? Well, a civil penalty isn't a long court process. It's like a parking ticket. It arrives, it's issued, it must be dealt with. And these can be up to £30,000 per breach. But commonly, what we're seeing is 5 to 7,000 per issue. So cheap. So, how do you become a target? Well, many landlords don't realise this, but councils are using data. They're using AI, for example, to find rental properties in the area with EPC ratings below an E. The council tax not matching ownership, multiple occupants, come around by neighbourhood complaints, so licensing inconsistencies. These properties are getting flagged, and once flagged, expect a visit. So what happens when the officer arrives? Well, the first thing they're going to assess, apart from the problem they arrived with, is HHSRS, the 29 hazards. Then they're going to look at your documentation, gas safety certs, EICRs, compliance records, and evidence of service of those. A real example, I recently spoke to a landlord, beautiful property, really happy tenants. Everything looked absolutely perfect. However, the gas safety certificate had always been left at the property by the contractor. Landlord simply paid the invoice. What's the issue? There's no proof it was ever served. So if that landlord ever needed possession in the future, there's a big compliance gap. And from an enforcement perspective, that can trigger a civil penalty. Now, the bigger risk from the 1st of May are rent repayment orders. So what's a rent repayment orders? Well, it allows the tenant or council to reclaim the rent. Now up to 24 months. So let's put that into perspective. The average rent locally is £1,200. So over 24 months, just under 30 grand. So how do they start? Well, we're already seeing claims companies, no win, no fee, ambulance chasers, call them what you want. They are contacting tenants directly, saying, have you reported any issues? Are the repairs unsolved? If a frustrated tenant responds, the claim starts. And they'll take a percentage of the rent repayment order, and you're pulled into the process. So what triggers it is if you're breaching laws such as the Criminal Law Act 1977, Protection from Eviction Act 1977, the Housing Act 2004, the Housing and Planning Act 2016. You can face civil penalties and rent repayment orders. So the key message in all of this, it's not about being a bad landlord, it's about being an unstructured landlord, because The risk now sits in the gaps, assumptions that everything's okay, and missing evidence. So the shift in all of this, for years the sector has worked on informal agreements, verbal understanding. It's always been fine. That world is changing. And the new standard is about evidence, documentation, process, because when enforcement arrives, intent to do things doesn't matter. Proof will win out. So, a final thought. From the 1st of May, two things matter more than ever. Looking out for enforcement and rent repayment orders. Be aware of them. If you get them wrong, the cost can be really significant. So let me be really clear. If everything I've just covered feels like a real surprise to you, or if you're one of those 82% of landlords who don't believe the Renters' Rights Act will affect them, think again. This Act is the biggest change to the private renters sector in over 30 years. It's been in development since 2019, and it's designed to raise housing standards, ensure landlords understand the nearly 200 pieces of legislation that affect this market. It's no longer something that you can manage informally. You need structure, you need knowledge, and you need the right support, because getting this wrong is no longer inconvenient, downright expensive. If you're in Cambridgeshire, this is exactly where we help. We work with owners every day to make sure that they stay compliant, avoid costly mistakes, and keep control of their investments. And if you'd like to see our most recent webinar on all of this, just DM me webinar and I'll send you over the recording. And why not subscribe to Maxine Lester TV, where we break this down each week, clearly, calmly, without the noise. One step at a time, clear, structured, protected. That's us. I'll look forward to talking with you.